Good evening, viewers, and welcome to Deep Space Wine, a Star Trek podcast featuring myself and Kat. We are finally here. We are at the end of season 1 of Deep Space Nine, which Kat and I committed to watching every episode and discussing in a wine-fueled wrap-up every couple of weeks, or as often as we could manage. And we often contrast our views between myself, a kind of veteran watcher who saw DS9 when it was first syndicated in the 90s, and Kat, who is new to DS9, but not new to Trek. So they wonderfully have a great perspective that the rest of us perhaps don't have who have seen DS9. Tonight is going to be a pretty free-form episode where we just reflect on the season as a whole. It's going to be particularly freeform for me as I have no script, no notes, largely nothing. So I am very glad to have Kat take the lead on this discussion and share some thoughts on the season as a whole.
I got opinions.
We cannot wait to hear them. It just comes with the usual proviso that, of course, anything Kat mentions that may be revealed later in the show or has a bearing later on the show, please keep your spoilers in chat to a minimum, as we want to preserve that that unfamiliarity. I was almost going to say ignorance, but that's not the right word.
It is ignorance. It is blissful ignorance,
Blissful
except for
ignorance.
the occasional meme, which is spoiled episodes to come.
Damn you, Star Trek ship posting. You're so funny and yet so hard to keep things hidden on a show that is 30 years old.
The other night, my partner was asking me, so do you know who the big bad is in Deep Space Nine? Do you know, like, who the main antagonist is in the later series? I was like, no, no, I don't. I know nothing that is plot relevant. I only know that, Bashir does James Bond at some point, and there's tribbles. I've got the occasional snapshot view of the odd episode, but I've got no idea of the overall story arc. So yeah, I've got so much still to learn and still to be spoiled for if anyone's in a very mean mood. So please don't.
Please be good to us. Please be good to us. So this is it. Before we get to all that exciting stuff, we still need to tie off the bandage that is season 1. And I think Kat has an excellent structure where we're just going to, I think, bounce around a few kind of key takeaways. High points, low points, key people, less key people, overall thoughts. So, Kat, I am very happy to kind of let you kick us off, and I will just bounce off you as we get going.
Yay! Stop me if I rant too hard.
How?
So I thought about doing a few, favorite character, favorite moment, maybe favorite quote, leading up to favorite episode, and I thought that by the time I've talked about all of my favorite bits of it, it's going to be painfully obvious what my favorite episode is. So I may as well just shove that right at the top.
Okay.
I am, however, I'm going to do least favorite and then favorite, so we maintain a little bit of, drum roll excitement.
Okay.
Although I think for anyone who's listened throughout, you'll have heard most of these views already anyway. But yeah, looking back over the whole series and thinking about what my least favorite episode was, it took absolutely no thought at all. It was really obvious. I just went straight to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you've listened to any episodes at all, you've probably heard me rant about it, regardless of which episode you listen to. If it came after episode 12, Vortex, you'll have heard me mention it. I probably have an irrational hatred of this episode now. It just falls short of the episodes around it. The story of the episode is that Odo meets a man, Croden, who is... We don't know whether Croden is lying or not throughout the entire episode. He tells Odo various things about the shapeshifters, who are Odo's people. Odo doesn't know anything about his own people. He is alone in the universe. But because I think most of the scenes in the episode are just Odo and this one-off character who may or may not be lying at any given moment, we don't get anything deep about Odo's own experience of his past. We don't get to learn anything new about his surrounding cast. I think unlike the episode where he's set against Loxana, who is a character that has never interacted with him before, there's no reason for him to open up to her. But they have a wonderful chemistry together, and he does end up telling her things about himself and his experiences that we've never heard before. You don't get that in Vortex. You just get this dude lying for the entire episode, and Odo being alone in the universe, which we already knew.
And as a season 1 episode as well, it was a great opportunity to actually build on it. And all they actually did was spend 45 minutes saying, we're not going to tell you anything. won't that intrigue you? And it's like, no, because every other character gets an episode where we do explore their past and we do learn about them. And I get that Odo's origins are a mystery, but you haven't deepened the mystery. You've just kind of wasted my time.
You just pointed at it a bit more and gone, everything we told you in this episode turned out not to be true. Well, great. Thanks for that, guys. So, yes, I think there is a universe in which there's probably a really good episode that looked specifically at Odo's origins, but it wasn't this one. So that's something I hope we'll get more of in future episodes, because I don't imagine for a minute that they've actually written an in-depth backstory for Odo. I think they will probably make it up as they go along. We did get a bit more in the episode with Laxana, but yeah, Vortex, and it just wasn't as nicely directed either. It didn't make as much use of the different levels of the set.
Yes,
I think
the things
more of
we
it
love.
occurred away from the set. A lot of it was just in a little room off to the side. It just didn't have nearly as much to offer as most of the other episodes did.
No, absolutely. I totally get what you are saying there, and I think we absolutely excoriated it in our episode discussion, and we pulled every little bit of it to pieces because so much of it did fall flat. The writing, the guest characters themselves, not compelling, not well written. I couldn't tell if they were meant to be a lovable scamp or a cynical, world-weary opportunist.
I think I don't blame the actor. I think William did a good job with a really ambiguous.
Yes.
The thing is, there are ways for actors to indicate to camera whether they are lying or not. There are ways that actors can there's grammar of that. We know that this character is untrustworthy by the way he's behaving, even if characters around them cannot tell. And he doesn't get to do that because he's got to remain ambiguous. He's not allowed to give any hint as to whether or not he's telling the truth until it gets to the final scenes. So he did a good job under really hard circumstances. But yeah, I wish they'd not written him. I wish they'd had just other members of the cast be there for Odo to interact with more.
100%. Maybe if they pitched this like 4 or 5 seasons later when we knew more about Odo and then it was more who's telling the truth, it could have been more interesting.
Yeah. I wonder whether there's something of it's a relatively small cast episode. The other actors don't have much time in it, so I wonder whether it was these 3 people aren't available this week. This is when we'll film most of the scenes for Vortex. There may have been very pragmatic reasons why they had an episode that centered around one character and one guest star who didn't have better things to be doing that week.
It's cynical, but I think you may have put your finger on a practical reason to film such a kind of substandard episode, which really does feel like it was cobbled together very quickly and very last minute.
I'm glad you agree. I'm glad it's not one of your core favourite episodes, and I've just been ripping into it month after month.
No, but I do look forward to us actually butting heads over an episode. That I think will be interesting. But I'd say so far we've largely, been on a parallel, and I don't know if that's about us as people or that we have an appreciation for what makes a good Star Trek episode. That's something I hope that we will come to figure out, because I wonder, you are an experienced Star Trek fan, you've seen lots, you're actually persevering with Enterprise, which is more than many Star Trek fans have done.
I've got some experience, but only in the last few years. I only started watching, I think, the year before last. I started with The Next Generation. So it's been extremely recent, and obviously all in my adulthood, all after I'd formed a lot of my political opinions and ideas already. So, yeah, I think I've been able to go quite deep quite quickly just because there's so much information out there about it as well. I can watch an episode, I can then look stuff up on it. I can find out what other fans think. I can see where it sits in the canon.
That's interesting, actually. I'd never thought of that, because for me, obviously, I watched it when it first came out in '93, and the only people I could talk to were friends at school. There weren't, there was no internet to discuss things or get background information. The most we had was maybe magazine, print media, old reflections here.
Oh, God, yeah, copies of SFX that have got episode spoilers in if you want to read ahead.
Precisely.
It was screened in the US. It was later in the UK.
Exactly. Oh, yes, so I must have seen it much later than '93, I'm not talking about. But yeah, there was no wider universe to dip into at that point. There was just the memories of TNG and TOS, and then straight into DS9, and all you could do was puzzle it out with people you knew at school.
And if you can remember a specific scene from an episode, but you can't remember which episode it was, you've just got to push in all of your VHSs until you get to the scene you're thinking of.
I remember when they started coming out at the local Blockbuster, another old reference, and being amazed because I could actually see them again and not be just at the whims of terrestrial broadcasting schedules. I could watch an episode of DS9 when I wanted. It was incredible, a golden age. So this era of streaming is just a paradise to us.
God,
but
I just had a very visceral memory of being a child, and if there's a breaking news story at the time when your favourite show's on, you just miss that episode.
That's it.
Oh,
You know. Thank you.
But again, the medium plays a role in how I interact with the object. The fact that I can go onto Facebook and chat about Star Trek with thousands of other fans who are still making memes about this fucking old TV show every single day.
Now that is a legacy. That is a beautiful, beautiful legacy, and in an incredible cyclical loop. Some of those memes then find their way into something like Star Trek Lower Decks,
yes,
which then gets shared back into the group, and it's this Ouroboros of insane content that I don't even think would pass muster as a Star Trek episode plot, and yet here we are. What a bizarre.
I don't know. I think the earliest, the thing most like that I can think of is in TNG, the episode where. Oh God, I've forgotten his name. There's a captain who comes in, takes over for Picard for I think just one episode.
Jellicoe. It's Chains of Command.
Jellicoe!
Yes.
And he implements a load of things that everyone complains about that the cast really, really wanted him to do.
Oh, right, yes.
So things like putting Troy into a proper uniform.
uniform.
Bridge instead of having a fitted body. That was something that she'd asked for and they'd never been able to do. So okay, strange captain comes in. He's going to make her wear the uniform that she wants to wear anyway. Putting them into a sensible shift pattern instead of having 2 12-hour shifts. Genius. Why not?
Nobody would want to do. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but I think that's the most similar thing that I can think of, rather than taking the views of fans and putting them on screen, taking the views of the cast and the people involved in making it and making it diegetically part of the story. We've already wandered way off track and we're on the first item on the list.
Absolutely crazy. Well. It's very in keeping with our standard and style, though, it must be said.
So yeah, least favourite episode, then favourite episode. Incidentally, Tim, was Vortex your least favourite episode of season 1, or was there anything you hated more?
I went back over the list, and annoyingly, I haven't kept any of my notes from episode to episode. I've just reused the same template and overwritten my notes, so I'm completely lost. The only other episode I could really recall having a major problem with was Passenger, where Bashir is possessed. Which I found very uneven and unsatisfying and had a terrible episode conclusion that I didn't like. So
yeah, the summary execution.
Oh my God.
No due process.
It was just
horrible.
It was horrible, and Bashir did an excellent job trying to act like somebody else at a time when we hadn't really gotten to grips with who he was. I found that a very uneven episode, but not necessarily bad. And the rest of them I didn't actually feel like I had major problems with. There were gripes and stuff, but almost on a therapeutic process. I think talking about them with you helped me kind of resolve and come to terms with, the problems I had with some of those episodes. So ultimately, I do feel like Vortex was a real low point. But, and I was going to say to you, that's like a couple out of a 20-episode run, if you count Emissary Parts 1 and 2, compared to, say, Season 1 of TNG,
yes.
I feel like it had a slightly more level rise in quality with, something like Duet at the end, which I feel is an excellent episode of Star Trek overall. I feel like Season 1 largely just was pretty uniform and crease. What were your kind of thoughts on the quality overall?
I absolutely agree. I think that every time they produce a new Star Trek, and this was only the second time they've done that, they've made TNG after the original series, and this was the next one they made.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of putting together a cast of characters who remain there consistently throughout. And that's kind of sitcom standard of making sure that the character interactions can be interesting enough, that there's sufficient space for dynamics to change over time. It must take a lot of sitting down and figuring out. And Deep Space Nine, I think, have done that so well. And yeah, yeah, I think for a first season of Star Trek,
Mm-hmm.
it is incredibly strong. They put a lot of work into it. Some people would say they stole a lot from Babylon 5, which some people do put down the success of DS9 to their having had access to the Bible for Babylon 5
So
before
I've heard.
producing it.
So I've heard.
Well, I don't know how the dates match up and how apocryphal that is.
It's one of those things where the dates do largely line up. You know, Straczynski had shopped it to Paramount prior to DS9. It was about the same time, so it's not impossible that Berman and Pillar, the exec producers of DS9, came up with it contemporaneously. I don't know, and it's never been properly analysed. I feel like Paramount's lawyers might get immediately interested if you try. I know it's been 30 years, but still, you know, I think
Yeah,
it's sensitive
litigious
subject.
odds.
Exactly.
But for me, I think there are sufficient differences that DS9 definitely, it's worth existing. It is sufficiently different from Babylon 5. It's a very different beast. And I think from the outset, it being near a wormhole and near a planet with a history that it is engaging with marks it out as very different from Bab 5 and from any other previous Star Trek.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It does have sufficient variety from both the Star Trek formula as established, an exploratory starship, and from Babylon 5. I don't know. It is there are so many weird overlaps, you know, such as the central captain being, you know, horribly enmeshed in the culture and religion of another culture.
Yes.
And the later series will be dominated by a war, a massive war. That's not a spoiler. That is just out there. So there are overlaps, but I do think where it counts, these two series are very different. But that is something
They
as well that
definitely
I'm.
are.
Um,
I actually think,
mm,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, at the end of season one, did you feel we were close to Babylon 5, or did you feel we'd moved further away? I'm not actually a massive Babylon 5 fan, so I'm keen to get your perspective on that.
No, I think I felt that we'd moved further away from it. When I think about Babylon 5, I think about Shakespearean drama between two alien races who are both been very well established as enemies. And they engage with lots of different cultures, but it doesn't have that singular focus that DS9 does on Bajor and on the Cardassian occupation.
Very good point.
And there isn't any direct crossover in the cast. I can't point at this character and say that that's the Babylon 5 equivalent. The characters are so very different. The highly religiously involved captain aside. But again, Sisko is a father. He's got a lot to him that marks him out as very different from the two Babylon 5 commanders.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was that
please.
which hadn't occurred to me until we were talking just now. In terms of when Deep Space Nine was made, it had the advantage that the Next Generation was still in production. The writers and the various backstage people, the Akudas, the people who did the design work, they were all still alive and engaged with Star Trek and there to be carried over. Having made the Next Generation so long after the original series, they must have had a real struggle between trying to match the still alive Gene Roddenberry's vision for what he wanted and the things he might have insisted take place.
Yes, 100%.
I understand he wanted, was it Deanna Troi he wanted to have 3 breasts when he first wrote her?
Yes, I'm afraid it was.
Oh,
That's well known. I know.
So trying to balance that against having I assume, a set of relatively young writers and young actors who want to create something of their own. There must have been very unique pressures and difficulties in creating the first seasons of the Next Generation. Whereas Deep Space Nine, they've got such a well-established universe from the Next Generation and that cast of real-world people to carry over with them, and Miles O'Brien and guest characters.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of putting it together, I can only assume it was a much smoother process because they were all already enmeshed in that world and the world was better established because the Next Generation really had to carry on with the Federation and Star Trek history from where the previous series had left off, many decades earlier. In the real world and in story.
Yeah, in both. And that is excellent. That is a point that David is making in chat there, pointing out that Deep Space Nine had a great, well-established lore to build on, exactly what you've said, as well as having that great, production setup, which already knows largely how to make Star Trek, and is probably hungry to make something a bit different. So I think that's why Deep Space Nine came really strong out of the gate. David also points out that Babylon 5 obviously had more of a hurdle to clear in that they had to establish a an entire fictional universe from the ground up very
Oh
quickly.
gosh, yes.
And that's why I feel that Deep Space Nine really excels is the fine detail, the minutiae of like, well, Vulcans, Klingons, Romulans. But what if we actually gave you something really kind of small and self-contained within that universe that has elements of what you recognise, but lets us go in a bit more depth. And because we're always here, we're always orbiting the wormhole, we're always got Beta next door, we can really go deep. And I think they
Yes,
got
and I
that.
think they go deep in the right direction. They go into something new. We haven't really explored Bajor and the Cardassians. I think there's one TNG episode, which I assume was kind of the same time that Deep Space Nine was being brought out. Shortly before, actually, no, because Ro was already a
Yes,
character,
the
Ro Laren.
Wounded. Oh no, sorry, that was O'Brien's Cardassian episode.
I can't for the life of me remember the title.
It might actually be Ensign Ro. I think it might actually just be
Yes,
called
actually, yeah.
Ensign Ro.
Yes, specifically because he calls her Ensign Laren initially because of the way that Bajoran names are reversed. So yes, Ensign Ro. But yes, I've just finished watching Enterprise, so that too is colouring my view of this. Enterprise tries to get in there and do everything first. If something happened in the original series, Enterprise wants to have been the first ones to have done it, and somehow it gets scrubbed from memory alpha. It just doesn't get carried in.
Yeah.
So Enterprise I enjoyed, but they couldn't do much that was new and novel because it's prehistory, because anything that happens in Enterprise has to be known in the original series, or has to be mysteriously forgotten, or has to be covered up. Hence, they've got a covert ops group within Enterprise.
Yes, of course.
But Deep Space Nine, they explore new things. They go in new directions. So at the same time as tunneling down into what is Bajoran culture, politics, religion, like what is it like to live in a world after an occupation, they're doing that anew. They're building it afresh instead of just digging deeper into Trek lore, which I think Star Wars struggles with a lot. Was that do you invent something new that happens in the future of this world, or do you take a minor character from a cartoon series made in the early 2000s and then I really appreciate that Deep Space Nine doesn't do that. It does pick up a lot of existing Trek lore, but it expands upon it rather than just taking a single line from a previous series and saying, oh yes, so this is why this thing happened. Although I understand that happens a little bit in Trials and Tribulations.
I think that is more
playful way.
Yeah, I don't know. That's more of a loving homage when we finally get to it. I would say.
Yeah, it's not how many Bothans died in this operation. Let's find out.
Yes, yeah. I think dabbling in the lore is a double-edged sword that can cut two ways very easily. Deep Space Nine goes deep into new stuff and builds it effectively and believably, and yeah, Enterprise fumbles what we already know, and yeah, just generally manhandles it. We're not fans of Enterprise here. Along those lines,
faith of the heart.
I just don't get this almost rabid passion for that damn song. But in an attempt to wrap this up, very quickly, what about Strange New Worlds and Discovery, both of which are prequels? I know Discovery later goes into Star Trek's future, very far future, but both of those also operated in that kind of pre and contemporaneous TOS era. So how do you feel they did it? Because I quite like.
I haven't watched Discovery yet.
Right, okay.
So that one I'm looking for. I'm probably going to watch that next because my plan is to finish Deep Space Nine to watch Deep Space Nine up to the point where Voyager diverges from it effectively.
Yes, excellent.
Because I don't want to risk spoiler in Deep Space Nine. I kind of like keeping them in order in that way. But yeah, Disco I will watch when I manage to get hold of it completely legally. Paramount. Strange New Worlds I really like, but I also feel that it's in the same way that I anticipate Trials and Tribulations will be. It's campy, it's having fun, it's very deliberately retro because it's looking back to the original series era, 100%. Slightly before it. It's playing with the lore, but in a way that I think does feel playful. And some fans don't like this idea. I don't think that it's strictly canon. I don't think it needs to be. Looking at how Spock and Chapel interacted in the original series, it's very clear that their story does not continue from a previous time when they dated. No, Chapel has a massive crush on Spock. Spock does not reciprocate because he's only got eyes for Kirk. You can't have Spock and Chapel have a massive romance behind the back of his fiancée and then say, oh yeah, and then the original series happens. No.
Yeah.
No. They're rewriting history a bit. They're playing with it. They're playing with our expectations of it, and that's delightful and it's fun and it's entertaining to watch. But I don't feel the need to slot it into Star Trek canon in the same way that I felt that Enterprise should fit with the history. And I think that TNG and Deep Space Nine, because they happened so long ago now, I see those as they are the Star Trek canon. I don't think I'd be able to say that DS9 deviates from canon because it was creating it as it went.
I like that approach. Definitely, there are things that I've watched in Strange New Worlds that I've gone, that does not make sense. And the Spock Chapel relationship is a good example. There are other examples throughout both Discovery and Strange New Worlds where they intermesh. I just think none of this. What are you talking about? And I'm at that point now where I just shrug and move on and just go, maybe it's a parallel universe. That's a good get out for sci-fi.
My level of investment kind of begins and ends at how high is Anson Mount's hair going to go this season.
Higher. I want to see that majestic peak towering over all. It is a thing of splendor and beauty, and people should travel from across the quadrant to see it.
Do you know, I want to see an episode of, the Paramount logo that's got that mountain in it? I want to see them opening that logo and then it fades out and it's just his hair.
I am sure as we speak, the ship posters are putting that image together in beautiful 4D vision. And I'm just going to quickly acknowledge as well, in the Indoor Cat, our wonderful, wonderful backrooms coordinator, is pointing out that the Secret Life of Spock is a bit ridiculous. It is absurd, the amount of siblings and parents, even as back as far as the original series, when Spock just does not reveal that Sarek is his father, and
this bad boy can fit so many secret relatives in him.
That's exactly the meme. That is exactly the meme. It is wonderful how unforthcoming Spock is about his life, which does actually give creators wonderful scope to introduce.
It does. I think what I especially love is that I'm also watching the Star Trek films. We've wandered far from Deep Space Nine now.
We will get back.
In The Search for Spock, Sarek confronts Kirk, absolutely furious that Kirk hasn't brought Spock's Katra back to Vulcan.
Yes.
The Katra being Spock's soul, which can be passed to another person upon the death of a Vulcan. And Sarek just comes to Kirk and says, why haven't you done this? Where is his Katra? What are you doing? Because there was no question in his mind that there was anyone else in the universe that Spock would have given his Katra to. Spock's boyfriend is the only thing in his life that he's not secretive about. The only man in the 1960s who was in the closet about everything except for his boyfriend.
That is an incredible read. What an exciting and incredible read. I am very, very here for that interpretation.
It's great to be watching the films and TOS in the age of the meme. Yeah. All the jokes are so accessible.
Absolutely.
Shall I move on and say what my favourite episode was?
Yes, we must. Absolutely. Let's do it now. Enlighten us.
This one, drumroll. I genuinely found it a bit hard to choose. I thought the two opening episodes, Emissary, were incredible. The storytelling about a completely new character's traumatic grief, getting us on side with Sisko so quickly, was masterfully done. There's a Q episode, which will always remain a favourite because I just freaking love Q. The Nagus is brilliant. So much fun and wonderful progression of the Ferengi, taking them a little bit further than they've been so far. Progress has a wonderful Bajoran A and B plot. Duet is just amazing television. But I think it's got to be episode 10, Move Along Home. I just love it. I love it so much. It's silly and it's a one-shot story that fits really well to the frame of Deep Space Nine that's been set up. They've got a station that's next to a wormhole that goes through to a different quadrant of the galaxy. It's a culture clash episode with Sisko wanting to play the regal diplomat and the Wadi just wanting to gamble and clack their Quan Pigs. It's got everything. It's got the characters having a chance to be ridiculous while trying to fight for their lives in a situation that wasn't actually dangerous. It's peak Star Trek. I absolutely love it. And I know that so many people hate it, which makes me love it even more.
That is the boldest claim I have ever heard. And you heard it here on Deep Space Wine. Kat has come down firmly in favour of Move Along Home, widely reviled as one of the worst Star Trek episodes. Not even just one of the worst Deep Space Nine. Not even one of the worst season one. No, one of the worst Star Trek episodes ever recorded is getting the cat seal of approval. I am
How dare I say
astonished.
something so brave yet so controversial?
let me just do the meme. Why would you say something so brave? That is incredible. But no, you know what? I think that is a testament to this podcast that Kat has come in uninfluenced by these kind of reviews. They've watched it. They've gone. This episode gave me everything I could possibly want, and they're not wrong with that interpretation. If you disagree, start your own damn podcast. No, I respect that point of view. I'm going to caveat that and say I don't agree, but I respect completely your point of view.
In fact, it is the point of view of someone for who Q is the epitome of all that a character can be. So the mischievous, infinitely powerful being. I do have a place in my heart for them. So yeah, the Wadi coming along with their absolutely incredible technology and their ability to kidnap people and put them in games, and they use it to gamble.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Love them.
There are some brilliant high points in that episode.
Bashir screaming.
Bashir
before
was
getting woken up by his boss.
Oh, what? I mean, that is a legitimate nightmare, and almost made me sympathetic to the good doctor, because nobody wants to start the day like that. But he was just absolutely helpless and useless, even for him throughout this entire episode. Really, actually aggravated me a lot. But I did love the Wadi.
The cast having to learn a little dance and song, and then each of them do it very seriously.
I mean,
Star Trek episodes produce a dance. Shockingly few. Probably the Strange New Worlds musical episode.
Sure.
And that's it.
I'm thinking Spock's brain, when people have to kind of get zapped by things they can't see and just kind of roil around in horror. That was almost a dance.
Another much loathed episode.
I am feeling the parallels, I'm afraid. But what did you think? Did you enjoy Spock's brain?
I seem to remember thinking that it was great fun. I just had some absurd element to it. I think it was one of the many episodes where Kirk's shirt gets torn.
Yes, 100%.
And he just wanders around topless for a lot of it.
So this is...
I don't remember the serious points of the original series.
It's really hazy for me. I don't think I've gone back and seen it in years, maybe decades. I think what I'm gathering is that you enjoy whimsy. Nice bit of whimsy.
Yeah, I do enjoy a good bit of whimsy. I think the thing is, I loved that the first episodes had a fantastic look over a man's life and the grief that he was exploring. That Star Trek can do wonderful, deep psychological work.
100%.
And when it does that well, it's beautiful. One of my favorite Next Generation episodes is Schism, the episode where Riker is being kidnapped and operated on.
Oh yes.
And various members of the crew are being taken away at night and brought back again with very small changes made to their bodies. Mm-hmm. And they stand together in the holodeck and gradually together reimagine what the table looked like. It's incredible. It's wonderful horror, and it's so well realized. I think that is one of the strengths of episodic television. I think there are weaknesses when it comes to overall arcs. But when you can have individual episodes that are meant to be primarily funny, primarily scary, primarily about character building, you can bring in the right writers to produce those things and then set them together with a director who is good at shooting those things. And I think that is one of Star Trek's great strengths. It contains such variety while still keeping the same cast of characters. And after the season 1 quibbles, those characters can remain reasonably consistent throughout. That's one thing I want to see more of in season 2. I'd like to see the characters become a bit less, what will they be like this week?
Yes. Well, that is something definitely that will get locked. I feel that it does get locked down and we get to know these characters far more reliably. And that is something that I was going to, kind of talk to you about, because it's hard, isn't it, to place a judgment on somebody that you might have only seen get maybe 1 out of 20 episodes actually focusing on them.
Yeah.
It is tricky. But just return to my earlier point, unfortunately, I don't think... I will let chat weigh in on this, but I don't feel that whimsy is one of the prevailing traits of Deep Space Nine.
The Quark-a-Dodo! And everything that Bashir does!
Quark and Odo remain beacons of joy and an increasingly implied... provocative relationship.
I love that they can refer to homicides that have definitely taken place, and they're just like, one of your friends knows who did this.
Yeah,
I can't say. I'm just a little guy running a bar. They're brim full of whimsy.
Yeah. Okay, I will give you that, but they become a bit of a flickering candle in a sea that becomes increasingly bleak and cynical, I would say, is perhaps some of DS9's prevailing views. There are some episodes that make my hair stand on end to think about what they discuss and things like that. Duet is a good, I think, barometer of that is not an outlier. It is representative of some of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine, but also some of the saddest. So
I'm not going to get traumatized by
I mean, a little bit. I think chat,
No.
do come in on here. Garak is a great example. Obviously, to quickly mention Garak, represents both some of the greatest whimsy in Trek and some of the most harrowing. He contains within him dichotomies of splendor that I'm really looking forward to viewing.
Some splendor. Oh, looking forward to that.
You can tell I've had a glass of two of wine. But yes.
But yes, seriously, one of the difficulties of watching the episodes so spaced out, because we're trying to record this once a fortnight, but real life keeps getting in the way. This is the 2020s, and life is being kind to no one. So yeah, part of the difficulty might be that if we hit episodes where difficult things are happening for characters, I'm not going to be able to very quickly watch the next 5 episodes to make sure they're okay. I'm going to have to sit with what happens in each episode for a couple of weeks until we've covered it again. So yeah, I might have to just keep watching Move Along Home as a palate cleanser in between to keep the joy alive.
Oh, I can. Oh, see it as your security blanket that you return to. Oh, Wadi, hold me. Clock your clong peaks, or was it clack your clong pleeks, or something like that? Well, I
brought some chopsticks in to clack at the camera.
That would be great. That would be great. I mean, if we had the capacity, I would love to go to like once a week, but it's a very tall order.
God, me neither. No, it's not going to happen. And it's good to have a long-term project to focus on.
This is
while the world crumbles around us.
This is absolutely it. No, sadly, you're right. We need somewhere to escape to. The indoor cat there is pointing out that you would love Voyager, which is a lot broader and has a lot more queue as well. But talking of long-term projects, I mean, yeah, we're looking a good 6 or 7 years down the line if we're going to maintain this. And we will not get through this if you keep getting diverted like this. You must tell me, Kat, and get me back on course.
Okay.
So we were talking about Move Along Home. That yes, you love. I think it's whimsy and it's good, surprisingly good plot elements.
Yeah, definitely. And I love Quark genuinely showing possibly career-based care about the entire command crew getting wiped out in one go. But
That would look
the
bad.
moment where he's screaming, please! It is both high comedy and tragedy. It's brilliant. Love it to bits. Which is your favourite episode of this season then, given that it's absolutely not Move Along Home?
Yes. Sorry, I'm afraid not. Now, I've bounced around a few times on this. I don't know if I can firmly come down on a choice. I think Duet is just an amazing episode. I love its concept. I love its delivery. I love the actors. Harris Yulin, who played Armin Maritza, and of course the wonderful Nana Visitor as Kira Reese, who I think is just a leading light of this show. In a cast full of brilliant actors, Nana Visitor as Kira Reese is superb, and I love it. It is, by all means, a sensible grown-up play that happens to be set on a space station. And for me, it therefore uses a brilliant plot to world build a fictional universe really effectively. So I love Duet. I also love Babel, because I think Star Trek is at its best when they are in that ship in a bottle, trapped disaster scenario. They had a mystery to solve. The station was at risk. People were dropping like flies. Unexpected heroes with Quark and Odo. I loved every part of it. Kira saved the day by actually doing solid detective work to find the man who invented the virus, and then finding out that he was dead and needing to find someone else and just abducting them and bringing them to the station.
Yes.
There is so
Oh,
much in Babel that I thoroughly loved.
you're
So,
right. Yeah, I haven't looked back over that one for
mm,
this episode, but
there's
yeah,
a lot.
it's a really strong episode, and it's a pretty good example of Star Trek doing sci-fi. It is a scientific problem. It's a
Yes,
linguistic
yes,
problem, a
yeah.
medical problem that they're dealing with,
And it
and
was
it's
such a creative problem as well. People, it interrupts their ability to communicate, which is really challenging to write an episode about because now you have people who can't talk properly. And in one
for
brilliant
actors who
moment,
complain about having to learn a bit of techno babble, having
now
to
they
learn an entire script and more or less random words jumbled together. They did a great job.
exactly. And they put it on a screen, they put it on a pad, you could see it. They would write it out and you could actually see the words. In one brilliant point through Bashir's point of view, and the words that were
Yes.
previously technobabble were now utter nonsense. That
So
is
good.
good creativity, it's good direction, it's good everything. So I love Babel as a really good early episode to show that Deep Space Nine can just do good, solid Trek. So
Yes.
those are
Good
up there as well.
choice.
And there are many others, but I don't want us to kind of get waylaid. So, yes, that's
Right.
my recommendation.
Least favourite guest character next. Croden from Vortex. I don't think we even need to go into what we've gone out. He had an incredibly difficult job to do, just pretending he was lying, pretending he was telling the truth, can't say until the end of the episode,
Yeah.
and then disappears out of our lives forever. Yeah, sorry, Cliff DeYoung, you did a good job under difficult circumstances. I hope we never meet.
I think it's safe to say that we will never see or hear from this again. A good example of when Star Trek doesn't follow up on plot lines it's established is: will we ever learn about them? No. Do we care?
Does
No.
Odette still have that little necklace with his
I don't
cousin
care.
inside it? Will that ever bear fruit? Will
No, and
anything
I
ever?
do not care.
No, he's shoved it in a drawer.
Yep, and it will
It's not
never
even
come
going to
up
get
again.
brought out in Picard. It's just been forgotten.
I'm trying to think. I'm quickly.
Is there anyone you hated more than Croden?
I'm flicking back through the episode list, trying to think. And actually, for the most part, the people they bring in were great. I think there are characters that I have learned to hate. The prosecutor in Dax, the the the.
Oh, yes.
The person who was pushing to have Dax executed, very good at being this kind of very passionate, bureaucratic man who's just like, I only want the truth, and the truth is I really want to kill Dax. And I was like, I really hate this character, and that's
Every trial scene needs one of them. The one who is just
exactly
dead set on proving the opposite of what we want for our characters.
100%, 100%. And who was the other? It was in the Hands of the Prophets, most recent episode, the first appearance of Space Karen herself, the wonderful oh, it doesn't matter, does it? Win, Adami Win.
Fedek win at this
Fedek
point.
Win at this point, who brilliantly came out of nowhere to deliver exactly the kind of fundamentalist small town for the children, for the good, kind of scheming political, but the character was horrendous, but the actor, delivered in spades. So I don't know if that counts as like the worst guest star.
This is the thing. In world, absolutely hate her. Out of world, love watching her. She's just terrible.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I want to see bad things happen to her. That's one of my hopes for future seasons. Bad things happening to Winadamu.
The best, worst, and a great actress there in the chat. Thank you, David. Thank you, Indar Cat. Yes, exactly. Everybody chiming in on that. Yes. What was the actress's name? Fletcher?
Louise Fletcher.
Louise Fletcher does return. Makes many, many returns, in fact, and becomes a wonderful ongoing character. No more detail to be provided. That will be interesting to see how that plays out. How about you, Kat, then? Anyone stick in your mind as a guest star?
Yeah, my favourite guest character. First, I thought about Grand Nagus Zek, very memorably portrayed by Wallace Michael Shawn. You mentioned Amin Maritza, Harris Yulin. I really liked Luxana Troy in The Forsaken. And I liked Primin. I wish Primin had got more time on screen, although I appreciate that he was only there to replace O'Brien for a few episodes. But he did a great job.
Interesting.
You're going to hate this. I really like Fallow, the leader of the Wadi. It's just so much fun. Apparently, I'm in a really basic mood this week. I just want to laugh.
And that is
I
perfectly
just really
legitimate.
like him. He's just so, he's
No.
really tall and really impish. And he
Mhm.
somehow carries that off, which I think not many actors could do.
No.
Although then again, John Delancey is also quite tall. Maybe I've just got a type.
Listen, this isn't going to become some kind of personal, analysis thing. You take that up with your therapist and your significant others. That's
I'll take that into my next Star Trek fan fiction.
Yowza. It's interesting
How
about.
about for you, Tim? Who's your favourite bit character?
Well, it's interesting you should mention Primin because um, I thought nothing about them. I just thought, there was not enough time to explore the character. I like the concept, which was, a straight by the book, calls it like sees it, Starfleet officer in a crew of absolute, just not that at all. Cisco is the nearest you have, and maybe O'Brien, but everyone else is really out on a limb in terms of who they are and what they do. So I kind of just did not even think about Prim at all, and I think that's a bit
I think that's
unfair on the character.
it was underdeveloped because there could have been a really nice him feeding back to the Federation getting up their asses about things that they were doing out here on the frontier. The kind of you could very well have built up to something like the drumhead with the "What the hell are you doing here, Cisco? We're going to have you thrown off the station." And Primin would have been a good entry into that, but yeah, they clearly did not decide to take that route.
No, absolutely not. Not for this. No. So possibly a bit of a wasted opportunity, but we'll have to see if that develops in other directions later on in the future. In terms of other guest stars, I mean, yeah, Harry Sheelan again was just a superb theatrical actor, which is his background, and he delivered. I love the fact that he was just a broad kind of. It was like an onion, every layer peeled back. Maybe he's just an obstreperous Cardassian, or maybe he's somebody hiding something. Maybe he's a goddamn war criminal. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's something else. Maybe he's actually this very damaged, wounded individual. Maybe at the end he's just a victim of a system of hate. I mean, it was incredible. He very, very compellingly took us on a very complex journey through his life, through the wider concept of the occupation, which is itself a wider background to the show and the universe that we love. So I absolutely relished that. And yeah, I'm going to copy off you blatantly, but I did actually think Luxana Troy, who I always just rolled my eyes when the TNG episode with her came round, she actually was redeemed for me in this DS9 episode by being actually behind the scenes. I am this person, and I am actually vulnerable in this way, and I will have an incredibly special moment with Odo, and expose some of my vulnerability, and become a more complex and rounded character. So it was actually wonderfully redeeming for me to see her like that.
I think within TNG they definitely try to do that for her. They have an episode where she's rushing into a marriage to a man that she doesn't love, and in the end she rejects him by turning up naked to their wedding, knowing full well that he wouldn't want that. Throughout that episode, she spends time with Worf's son Alexander, and they kind of him near at the start of his life and her closer to the end than the beginning. They have a later episode where she deals with the loss of a child from many years earlier. So I think they very deliberately wanted to build more in for that character. I don't know whether they did just want to make her more likable after she'd been so strident for so many episodes.
That might be a little bit of it.
But yeah, I think because she is an older character and because she's someone you don't expect it from, when she has those moments of vulnerability with Odo, it works incredibly well and it feels very real. Yeah, I'm glad that they brought her in to do that rather than a female character that they invented on the spot to do that with. I think it worked much better for having Luxana there, and her in all her glory and all of her horror at the beginning of the episode and her reacting to that.
Yeah, that was very on brand, and then it took a left turn and it became a really, really meaningful and significant heart-to-heart, which I think we all thoroughly enjoyed. So props to Majel Barrett for delivering that. And I'm just looking at the episode list again and noting Brian Keith, who played Mullibok there on the screen, the farmer in Progress, which I also thought was...
he was a very good character.
A very good character, a very complex, rounded individual, had great interplay with, wouldn't you know it, Nana Visitor as Kira Nerys. Seems like there's a theme emerging here where Major Kira gets just some of the best, juiciest plots to sink her teeth into, which are good, character-driven one-on-ones. So yeah, honourable mention there to him as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take us on, Kat.
And
What else is on your list?
my next thing up is least favourite main cast character,
Oh, wow.
which it's incredibly hard to choose because I think season 1 gave every character a chance to shine at one time or another.
Yep.
I genuinely want to see more of all of them. And I thought about saying Odo just because his thing is being grouchy and being a cop, but his dynamic with Quark is so much fun. I really enjoy seeing them together on screen. So yeah, I think the whole cast is very well rounded, and there isn't any character that I'm bored by. There's no character that I don't want to see. I enjoy seeing them interacting with each other. I want to learn more about all of them. I just think they're all very, very well written, and I genuinely love all of them. I don't actually have a least favourite.
I'm glad to hear that. Would you say then that there is any character that's been misserved by this series? I'm already thinking of one character who did not get the character development they needed in season 1. But is there any character you feel specifically was skipped?
You see, I'm going to regret this one to see season 2 onwards and learn how much character development everybody gets. I think we could have had more of Odo. I liked the episode with Waxana, but yeah, I do think that we could have. There could have been more enmity, I think, between Odo and other characters as established, because he and Quark very clearly have a love-hate relationship, which is fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think maybe they do stick with Gene Roddenberry's vision of you don't have major conflicts between the characters. I think we have some between Sisko and Kira, but there's no one on board who really hates Odo, I don't think. Just the occasional character that pops up and is a criminal and hates him for that reason.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting that you're picking a very kind of core issue Star Trek has, which is that kind of, inter-character drama. I'm trying to think, off the top of my head, it's not coming to mind, and there's nothing I really want to spoil, but I do think that they've always striven to show that the crew ultimately does operate together, and that even happens in later installments, like Voyager. Intercast, issues are not a major thing. I would say the newer series do get to play with that a bit more, and it will be interesting to see your impressions as Strange New Worlds develops and what you make of Disco as well. That will be interesting. But I would 100% agree with you. I think Odo has gone from being the most intriguing character to just being the most frustrating character because we still know nothing about him, and we are 20 episodes in, and he has been a great supporting character, and occasionally a couple of brilliant main characters in episodes, and we still don't know anything.
I'd say it. He's very useful. He's a very plot device kind of character because he can hide in any room as any object. He's got a good detective mind on him, so he's good for problem solving and tracking down criminals. So he's really good plot wise, but yeah, in terms of who he actually is, we don't know. I don't think the writers actually know yet. They know that he's a cop, but I think we pointed out before in one episode, he was perfectly happy with Cardassian rule because at least you knew where you stood with them. And by a couple of episodes later, he's a law unto himself with his own moral compass. And yeah, I'll be interested to see where they settle and develop that because I don't think they've actually decided yet who Odo is or what kind of a cop he is even. He's a good procedural cop in one of the last episodes, but otherwise we don't know anything about his moral compass wavers greatly.
It does, and as the Indoor Cat correctly points out in chat, Odo's arc is very spoilerific, even amongst other characters, so we're not going to go near that, but...
Sorry for prodding that beehive.
It's my fault because I totally agreed with you and thought the same. That we have to act like we are seeing this for the first time. You are seeing this for the first time, so we'll act like we're seeing it for the first time. Which is, regardless of what may come down the line, right now Odo is not being well served. But that is not your question. Your question is, who did you not enjoy? And I'm going to say very firmly that Julian Bashir has done nothing but annoy me for the most part in season 1. I appreciate that they are building him as that character of this really raw, overly confident, entitled little gobshite. But I feel like they've laid it on really heavy, and they haven't done too much to redeem him or show the other side. And we've come from an experience with very competent medics: Leonard McCoy, Beverly Crusher, Pulaski.
Yeah.
These are competent professionals, and you get the feeling that Bashir is a good doctor, but it's so hedged about with just his absolute naivete, juvenility, absolute lack of social awareness, and not in a kind of, oh, the guy doesn't get social clues, because that's fine. It's not that he doesn't get them, he doesn't even try to get them. He's done nothing but annoy me, so I'm afraid I'm very firmly saying Julian Bashir in season 1 is just not my cup of tea. And thank you, Sarah Orange, who has also said Bashir is just super annoying. So, Kat, please do give me your impressions of Julian Bashir season 1.
You're never going to guess who my favourite character in season 1 was.
What?
It's just to move him in this week.
Well, please, I am eager to hear.
I'm aware that it is because they haven't yet laid the ground properly and they haven't yet decided who everybody is, but I really like that Bashir is so unpredictable. You don't know whether you're going to get horny Bashir or ridiculously boastful Bashir or excited Bashir or unassailably queer Bashir or foot in mouth Bashir or some combination of the above. You just never know. You roll the dice and you get the weird little ooh-woo autism ADHD doctor princess that you want. He's amazing. I love him. I love him so much. I've put in my notes that for a character who could have been relegated to speaking medical jargon and reading from a tricorder, he got to have a lot of fun in the first series. I think that even if the character is inconsistent, they deliberately crammed him with character at every moment. There's the odd episode where he comes on and goes, "Yes, this man is dead." But other than those moments, he's generally there acting up in one way or another, and I really appreciate that. I like that among these very mature characters, you've got Kira, who has seen a lot of war. You've got Dax, who has lived multiple lifetimes.
Yes.
Cisco is a very mature, responsible parent.
Yeah.
Odo has been a cop under the Cardassians and now under the Federation. They're all very mature and worldly people. So to offset that, you've got Bashir, who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing and keeps putting his foot in it. And I love him for that. I love that he's there to be the audience stand-in sometimes and doesn't understand about proper procedure and doesn't have his fucking dress uniform with him, despite them coming out of replicators.
Oh my god, Kat, that is a wonderfully refreshing view, and is just absolutely core to why we do this podcast. Because it could have just been a podcast with a couple of old fans talking about it, but you have such a refreshing view on this. Thank you so much. I'd never looked at the show.
Such a naive idiot. I just love all the wrong things.
I'd never thought of it like that you could actually look at it and go, well, yeah, Bashir's entertainingly stupid. No, he's not stupid, but he's just woefully out of his depth in every single situation he gets into. Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that, because we all look at past prologue, his first encounter with Garak, as a touchstone of Star Trek lore, especially really, really super horny Star Trek lore. You filthy, filthy fans. And yeah, he was there, and it was his naivete and Garak's much more studied, calculating, complex counterplace to that. The interplay between them was absolutely brilliant and is really unmatched.
There's no other character that Garak could have approached who would have just been, oh, but am I a spy now? Oh, yes, brilliant! I'm going to go and tell everybody! Everyone else would just have played it cool and it would have been boring as hell. But no, Bashir's just like, oh my god, the lizard man wants me to spy for him. I can do this. Yes, I'm ready. Wire me up. He's brilliant. He's so daft.
That is incredible. That is incredible. I'd never, ever thought of it like that. Thank you so much for that point of view. It will be interesting then to see, and we must hang on to this thought of, okay, let's routinely compare Bashir and Garak's interactions in later episodes and seasons to that first introduction. How do you feel about it? Because it will be so interesting to kind of take a temperature check, basically, of that.
Yeah, because I do anticipate that it will change, because Garak was probably only intended to be a one-off character, given that they didn't reintroduce him in the first season.
That's right.
So once they've actually decided what role he's going to play and how his relationship with Bashir and presumably with the others is going to play out, I expect it to get a lot less silly over time, and I kind of hope I'm going to be disappointed in that. I hope that it is going to stay silly. But yeah, I don't think that based on that one interaction, I could extrapolate what is going to happen between them. I don't think there's enough data there yet. So I'm greatly looking forward to finding out what happens between Garak and Bashir particularly, but just Garak as a character and how he gets fleshed out.
100%. It's going to be exciting, and I am pleased that one of my favorite Garak episodes in all of Deep Space Nine is coming up in season 2. In fact, a couple of really good ones for him are coming up, which is why we are plowing through this so that we can get to it even sooner. But yes, so there we are. So that's the main cast.
Which was your? Do you have a favourite main cast character? To determine that your least favourite is my absolute favourite.
Yes, that's right. We did establish that. Most favourite. This is tricky now because it is season 1 and it's still very early days, and
you've got a full knowledge of what these characters become
and it's
later.
hard to switch that knowledge off, and I'm doing my best to buckle it and think about it. And I would say I'm torn between O'Brien and Nerys, Major Kira. I always love the everyman character. I love the audience surrogate, the audience stand-in, and more than that, O'Brien is also written as something of a slight shift away, because he's an enlisted man. He's not a Starfleet officer out there exploring strange new worlds. He's just a guy who has a job that happens to be in space.
He's definitely the most put upon of the main cast. He doesn't get the glamorous stuff. He doesn't get to explore strange new worlds and meet exciting. Although he does actually in The Visitor. He does get, but that's very deliberately to take him out of his usual comfort zone and out of his usual role.
Exactly. But I love his interactions with so many situations because they feel so close to my reactions, which is always to roll my eyes, go bloody hell, and then try and fix it with insufficient tools. I relate so hard to Miles O'Brien in so many ways that I just love it, and I love his reaction to every single situation he's in. So I love it. But I'm just going to inch over the line and say, actually, the person I most enjoy watching is probably Major Kira. I am so much in awe and have a slight crush on Major Nerys, but very kind of terrifying, respectful. She would throw me against a bar like she threw Quark against a bar in Dramatis Personae, which was also kind of hot. But she is just this wonderful, complex character from the get-go, delivered with such impact, such believability by Nana Visitor, that I'm in awe. She's not at all Starfleet. She's not Federation. She is Bajoran. And she has to work with them. And she feels conflicted about that, and feels conflicted about so many things, and yet she does it all with professionalism and humour. Everything she does, for me, is just golden. So I've got to say, I'm coming away saying that Major Kira is probably my favourite at the main cast at this
There's
point.
a lot to love about her, and I think especially Nana Visitor's her ability to move between emotions quickly and believably. Because these are 45-minute episodes, so if someone dies, you've got to react to it and then move on from it within the space of a couple of minutes. And her ability to put her whole body into her emotion is absolutely incredible. I can't remember the Battle Lines, the one where Kaio Packer dies and comes back.
But
just, Nana knows that Packer is going to be back in 30 seconds' time, but is still embodies grief in those moments after her death.
100%.
She acts incredibly powerfully, and I think it would have been very easy for someone to have acted Kira Nerys as just uptight and nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretending that a very stiff exterior is withholding a lot of emotion, but no, her emotions are just there on the sleeve, and she is a hardened, battle-worn freedom fighter. It's a beautiful portrayal of a really nicely nuanced character even in these early days. Yeah.
Exactly. She has that one scene, I think, in Progress where she's in a runabout with Dax, and you can see the germs of a friendship start to emerge. I think that's not something Star Trek's really done a great job of, is, firm friendships between a couple of female characters. Troy and
Yeah, very
Crusher
good
had
and
some great.
list.
Exactly. It's something that needed to be done. There needed to be better interpersonal relationships, especially amongst female characters. And I think, it was there. It was just there, and it was such a wonderful refreshing change of pace. And again, it was just another quiver in the bow for Anna Visitor. Great, good to see.
Good choice.
There we go. Cool. Take us along, because we are flying today, and we don't want to be here for 3 hours, as much as we probably could.
Oh, right. The next section is extremely broad. Things I disliked about season 1, things I really loved about it. Things that
Good
just didn't
luck,
fit
everyone.
The low points are a very, very small category. Everything about Vortex, and the summary execution of Vantica at the end of episode
Yes.
9, The Passenger. I think those are the 2 points that stuck in my mind as being memorably bad, for want of a better word. Yeah.
That's
You
fine,
hated
actually.
everything about Bashir and Move Along Home.
I would say yes, largely. I'm flicking back through the. I wish I'd made some notes before coming into this.
Life's too busy to start formulating opinions before you say them live on the internet.
Why break with the habit of a generation, eh? But yeah, honestly, I'm looking back through it and largely going, other than really minor things that I think we get into in each episode, which is like, oh, this wasn't shot very well, or, I wish they'd fleshed out that character more. There isn't massive, overwhelming issues, except, I wish they'd given Odo a little bit more than Vortex. But that ties into exactly what you said about Vortex. He gets little bits, yeah, like you say, with Troy, Loxana Troy. But there's just not enough development of possibly the most interesting character in the cast at this point. He's not Starfleet, he's not human, he's not any species we've ever encountered before, and he's the chief of security. You'd think there'd be a massive urge to write so much about Odo in season 1.
That's a really good point. He's tremendously unknown, and they've given him probably the most crucial security position on the. Yeah, I don't know whether he's actually got secret allegiances that he's lying about not remembering.
This is absolutely it, and
it's so risky. What are they doing?
Well, it actually becomes a plot point a few times, like bringing in Primin for the 2 episodes wasn't, out universe. Yes, it was to cover O'Brien's absence, but in universe it is. The Starfleet is like, well, we nominally own this facility, and the person in charge of all security for the station is not somebody employed by us, known to us, or even a species we recognise.
Yeah.
What? And it becomes more of a plot point. Mild spoilers there. It does become. Well, it shouldn't even surprise you, really, that it comes up again in the future. The Starfleet is never totally happy with this situation. But ultimately, the script, for whatever reason, does never really properly address that. And you'd think it would be baked in from day one. This is a really interesting thread. Let's tug on it. And they don't.
No, I think they like having a shapeshifter. He's very handy. Let's not unravel that too early on.
Maybe something will come up in season 2 that we'll want to play with, and we shall see. Other than that, yeah, I can't think there's loads really. There are just bits they drop in episodes, and yeah, some pretty bad screamers. You've mentioned Vortex, which I agree with. I say The Passenger also is not. It's just not great. It's not even a really original concept. It's just so, enemy hiding within the crew disguised as something is something that the original series has done. It's something the Next Generation has done. It's a very by the numbers Star Trek episode, and it ends very badly, as we've said earlier. So I feel like Deep Space Nine at this point is great when it really goes beyond and says, what can we do new within the Star Trek universe? What can we do to build the world we're exploring with Deep Space Nine? If we just try and whack out a by the numbers Star Trek episode, we're not gonna land the mark. So that's my kind of.
I can see the temptation to put one in there, though.
Sure,
just because
absolutely.
You want to keep the fans on side. You want to give them something that feels familiar, at the same time as hoping that they will move with you into this bold future of stuff that they haven't ever done before. So yeah, I can't blame them for trying to put in some by the numbers episodes, but yeah, no, you're right. That was not a great one.
How about you? Well, yeah, I think you said, stuff vortex. Anything else that you really just did not enjoy?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, Vortex and the end of the Vantiker episode were pretty much it. I think everything else I've enjoyed so much about every episode. There's been, just an embarrassment of riches in every single one, which, again, for a first season of Star Trek, is absolutely incredible.
Precisely. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you, Kat.
So, things I really liked about season 1.
Take it away, please. Eager.
First of all, I'm not a very child-orientated person. I'm now in my 40s. I've no children. I've no intention to have children. I don't usually seek out children's media, for example. But I love that we've got recurring child characters in Deep Space Nine.
You mentioned that, yeah.
In The Next Generation, we had Wesley, who was on his own. I think there's one other episode where he's with another ensign. Actually, no, there's a couple of episodes where there are other ensigns for him to bounce off. But he's not in it a great deal, actually. There aren't a huge number of episodes with him in. And he doesn't carry many plots himself. I think the first one that he could be said to carry is the one where he smashes a greenhouse and gets the death penalty.
Yes, on sex
So but Deep Space Nine has got Jake and Nog. It's got Molly, who is too young at the moment to carry a plot on her own. But it's Star Trek is about the future of humanity in space. It's about and Deep Space Nine particularly, they want it to be long term. Even in this first series, they want to carry these characters into a future. To do that with only adults does feel strange. The phrase "the children are the future" is very true, and to not show that children are being raised in the environment is weird. And I think TNG did recognize that. They had like the Captain Picard episode, Captain Picard Day episode.
I've become something of a role model.
I love that episode. It's so dumb. They've got an episode where I think all of the children from Enterprise are taken away for an episode.
Oh my God, yes.
And then brought back again. There was a species who lost their ability to have children, so wanted to kidnap all of theirs. Right. So they do understand that children have an important role to play, but they still didn't manage to centre them very often. It was the odd kind of novelty child-based episode. Rascals being another notable one.
I was hoping you weren't going to mention Rascals, because I find Rascals really just annoying.
Yes, number one. He's my number one dad.
Oh God, I want to airlock that kid so badly. I'm sorry, I don't condone violence towards children.
Picard would have been exactly like that as a child. He's an upper middle class twit, and that kid gets it perfectly right. And you've got Kid Ro-Laren learning how to be a child for the first time. And child Guinan, who somehow just embodies Whoopi Goldberg as a young child. She's incredible. I love the story. Right, see, this is where we have problems.
No, the contrast is good.
I like stupid whimsical episodes.
And that is so critical. That is so crucial. It is necessary.
Yes, but importantly, Deep Space Nine doesn't need to do that because it's actually got children embedded within the lifestyles of these people. You've got Miles and Keiko's child. You've got Cisco's kid. You've got you've got Rom's kid, Nog. And yeah, these are people who exist in this world. They're not just there to drop off of school and then have problems. They have interactions with the adults about topics that matter. And I really like that. I assume that it was partly done cynically to try and draw in more of a child audience, but at the same time it deals with such heady themes that I don't know if that was really on their mind.
I don't know. And certainly I think, again, trying to avoid spoilers as best I can, but that is not borne out because they don't come back for like token kid storylines. They come back with really complex interactions that do reflect the fact that they're younger characters, but they carry episodes themselves. They carry great episodes. There is an absolutely incredible episode coming up that focuses around Jake, and I'll say no more about it, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So I would say that I don't think it is, like Wesley Crusher, a cynical attempt to reach the youth, which was just unfair to the character and the actor, I feel. Ultimately, I do not think TNG
He's not made good use of, isn't Paul Wesley?
No, he is not. And I feel that... oh, God, I forgot the actor's name.
Will Wheaton?
Will Wheaton, I think Will Wheaton has been incredibly resilient about at one point being possibly the most hated part of Star Trek Next Generation when it was huge, which I think is very unfair on him, considering he was simply a vehicle for a writer's creation. So I feel like Will Wheaton deserves a lot of sympathy, and I also
Oh,
know that he had a very challenging personal life as well. So ultimately, what you fixated on is great. It's really exciting because I think DS9 does go down that path, will deliver on that point, and I'm so excited that you picked up on that because I'd never thought of it like that. I'd never thought of it because in my mind I've always just looked at the child characters within Deep Space Nine to actually be just parts of the main cast. I don't look at them to be, oh, they're here to push
definitely.
a
And
child
that's
storyline.
just it. They very much are. If Cisco's dealing with something difficult up in ops, he'll
Mm.
go back to his quarters, and
Have
Jake
a
will be there.
conversation.
Have a chat about it while they eat dinner.
Exactly.
It's they're woven in. That they don't just get all of the episodes to themselves. I love Deep Space Nine so much. It's so
Great. Anyway, I completely waylaid there. I'm sure you have many more things to say, so please.
I have a few. I like that the technobabble is a bit more grounded and a bit more tied in with the plot in Deep Space Nine, and I don't think Star Trek's ever been bad with techno. For all that the term Treknobabble has been coined, I think the use of language around science and technical issues, it's
Mm.
been built into a canon of its own. The use of warp, the use of impulse drive, it's consistent. It's good in world. But I think that when it comes to matching that to technical action on screen, Deep Space Nine does it especially well.
Mm.
Thinking especially of the last episode where you had characters reaching into a console at the start, the camera filming them through it. Whenever someone gives an instruction, it actually feels like something real in world. The scene where Dax goes to enhance a picture and she has to write an algorithm to do it. Because these things don't just happen
You
automatically,
can't just
Cisco.
push
This
three
isn't
buttons.
television. Yeah, it's brilliant. It just feels as if there's more thought and more
Mm.
gravitas given to it. It's got to be a bit more
Mm.
real in Deep Space Nine, and I appreciate that. I wanted to say that I like how the ops team's conversations sometimes include dead ends. They come up with technical solutions that don't end up being relevant.
Yeah.
But the only example I could find of this was in one episode
It does
where
happen.
it was a red herring. In If Wishes Were Horses, the plot hinges on Dax remembering the Hanoli incident, and when they bring it up, they're talking about, well, did the
Yes.
Vulcans in that incident experience hallucinations? No, they didn't, but they died shortly afterwards.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the whole episode hinges around the fact that Dax thinking of it made the subspace anomaly happen in the first place.
Oh my god, that's
So I
absolutely
think
right.
I got this idea in my mind throughout that this keeps happening. There might be some instance of it, but I couldn't find them in my notes.
Mm.
Uh, and that is another problem of watching it. I don't regret the way that we're doing it. I appreciate the depth that it allows me to go into. But it does mean that if I develop a strong idea about one episode, the risk of me generalizing that to the whole series is not small because I'm not watching them in quick succession and I'm not doing a quick comparison. It's an in-depth look and then an in-depth look and then a few weeks later another in-depth look.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Um,
right.
so yeah, I think I caught myself in that one. But nonetheless, the use of Technobabble I think is exceptional in DS9. I enjoy it very much.
I'm really glad to hear that, and it's interesting actually. I'd also never thought of comparing it to how Technobabble's been done previously in Star Trek, which yes, I suppose has been more of a kind of get out clause, like oh that's fine, just reverse the polarity, route it through the main deflector, and we're home in time for tea.
And it also tends to be less of a conversation in the next generation. I think
Geordie
about the
just
scene where Geordie is doing the PowerPoint of the what looks like a butt plug, and it's at a time loop. And
so
it'll be
you're
one
saying
character
we
explaining
could have
what the
seen this
problem is.
meme 100 times before.
Impossible to know. Um, But yeah, it's not one character presents the technical problem, the other engineering character solves it. You haven't got Data and Geordie just working off
Very good
each other.
point.
You have got O'Brien sometimes working things through with his ensign. That's a good situation, or with Dax
Yeah.
figuring out how to solve problems. But a lot of the time, it's all of them sitting around a table in ops, talking about the issue and each giving their input. It feels like more of a conversation and it feels more organic. I think than it did in TNG, which again may be an impression I've picked up, which is wrong, but that's the impression I've got, so I'm sticking with it.
No, I do like that. Yeah, I'd never analysed that kind of interplay amongst the cast, except for times when yes, I've noticed that Dax and Brian do play off of each other very well, being both kind of technical experts. Because I like seeing Dax being a technical expert, because as enlightened as we are in 2024, I think in the early 90s, seeing a woman being a technical expert was still a little bit unusual, because we had many TNG episodes about how Troy was a bridge officer and yet didn't know a lot about operations of a starship. And there was like the very clumsy attempt to kind of turn that around when she took a bridge officer certification exam. And
it was really cruel to have that character be the one who's in charge of the Enterprise when it crashes in Generations.
Oh yes! Oh my God! Yes, yes. To be fair, and there's been a lot of discussion about this. Troy was at the helm, and she does say very early on, "The helm's not working. The ship is no longer responding to my command."
Why did you have to give it to the counselor? Couldn't they have let Riker be the one to take the fall on that one?
He absolutely should have. But it was very unfair, I think, to say, Troy, right, you've got to run for the very first time. You've got to run to the front of the bridge, take over the ship controls. And she's like, "Great, what do I do?" And they say, "Nothing. The controls don't work. All you do is say one line, which is the controls don't work, and then the ship crashes. So we'll blame you forever for crashing the flagship." Very cruel, very unfair. Redeemed with Jadzia Dax, very intelligent young woman, possesses the technical knowledge of 6 lifetimes, is clearly a very accomplished scientist.
And can do all of this while Bashir's trying to hump her leg.
Oh my God, will you get off? Like little spray, little hyper spray, water, get off, down, get down.
No, Juliet, no!
Exactly. But yeah, I love Technobabble. I absolutely love it. And I've never really analysed it, but actually it is wonderfully delivered in DS9, isn't it? Where they actually do try and work it in so it's a bit more natural than, as you say, the magic wand that I think sometimes gets used in TNG.
Yeah, definitely.
And it
becomes... I'm not sure that they've actually diverted power from...
No.
Or they divert power from constantly as like life support. They end up taking really important stuff off.
They love diverting power from life support.
It's like DS9 isn't going anywhere. There's no need to do that. The dramatic high point is never, can we get the electricity back on? The lights are off.
Turn the oxygen off, turn more lights on. Whoever thought that would be an effective solution? What on earth are you talking about? No. Deep Space Nine does exactly the opposite. It's actually, we're not on a Federation starship. This Cardassian tech is old, unreliable, and unfamiliar. And I love that there is a whole new recontextualization, if you can forgive me a 4-syllable word, of what has actually been a Star Trek trope, which is, oh yeah, reverse the polarity, solve the day. Now it's like, I don't know how, and the thing that does the polarity doesn't work. So I'm actually in a worse situation than I was on the Enterprise, which is a very refreshing view of Star Trek. So I would absolutely love that point of view. Thank you, Kat.
And in terms of the dynamics, it means that you've effectively got sometimes the whole crew against the station that they're on. It's not this shining, bright new starship filled with the best technology that the finest minds in the Federation could come up with. It's a Cardassian mining station. It didn't work well when they were on it. It's not working well now. It's the kind of party cracker joke thing. It's everybody against the Cardassian tech. So if you want conflict, you can get it immediately just by having a turbo lift breakdown.
As famously happened in I think Invasive Procedures, the one where they downloaded the contents of a probe back from the Gamma Quadrant.
Oh, gotcha!
And they stranded.
Yeah, the puppy that's never going to turn up again. That the entire ship, the entire station is now running through.
But yes, 100%, at the end of the day, the creators are still Star Trek veterans. Pillar and Berman are both, former producers and script editors of Star Trek. So they are going to import, even unconsciously, some Star Trek tropes, which is, we solved it in this episode, let's just not go back there.
Never mentioned again.
Never mentioned again. Even though that became the genesis of, forgive the pun, a brilliant Star Trek movie, which is, the original series dumped Khan on a planet and never visited him again. And,
Which set it off a planet again? The one with abundant life or the one that's a fucking rock?
Doesn't matter, we'll never have to come back here again. Actually, what if you did and you realised that you can't just dump problems on planets and pretend they're not there? Anyway, that's me ranting about a very familiar Star Trek problem. So, yes, that does happen. And that is, I think, a Star Trek problem, sadly, that we will never get away from, which is a shame. What was I talking about? But yes, bad technology, drowning people in turbo lifts. What a good idea! And just to say that one of my favourite Deep Space Nine episodes is centered on the station being actually not a friendly and hostile place. So we will just wait for that to roll around, and I can't wait to see it because it is a great episode. But that's it. Do you have anything more on your list? Because I always feel like I'm the one segueing us rapidly out of your very salient points.
Oh no, it's great. You need a bit of chaos now and then. Hence, let's see. Yes, the writers do a great job across the series of spreading out the variety of arising problems and therefore who among the main cast has to deal with them. So you've got some good crime episodes for Evdon Quark, scientific and technical problems for Dax and O'Brien, medical issues for Bashir, Bajoran religion and politics for Kira, diplomatic issues plus all of the above for Cisco.
Yeah.
And I think they strike a really good balance across the series. It doesn't ever feel as if several episodes in a row are dealing with the same kind of issue. Even when several episodes are about Bajor, they spread them out nicely in the series, and they're dealing with different aspects of life on Bajor. So they just do really well with the kind of headlines of each episode. The topics are really well chosen and really varied.
God, that's a really good point, and I had also not thought of that. The only thing I would say out of that was, yes, you do mention that Bajor comes up in a few, and I feel like it's an effective way to build that world, which is something we are fans of. But yeah, they don't overegg it, do they? It's just always rumbling on in the background. That's right, Kaya Parker's gone. There needs to be a new Kai.
Yeah, because then they could just have introduced Vedek Wynn right at the start of the show and built her up as a villain over the course, and they don't. They introduce her right at the end, trusting that will carry over into the next series. Yeah, with lots of different kinds of Bajorans.
God, that's a really good point. Yeah, that is surprising because I do feel like TNG very much struggled with trying to move out the shadow of the original series and making itself its own show, which is ironically a problem Deep Space Nine also struggles with. But that bumpy first series is always, how do we find our feet? How do we define ourselves as a show? And TNG has The Naked Now, which is a complete sequel to what is the original? Huh?
The Naked Time, the
That's
original one's
right.
called.
It's exactly the same thing. And it does exactly the same thing, except it makes characters we aren't familiar with act in a really weird way.
And the original one is actually quite a lot of fun because you get to see Sulu fighting with an
It's
epee.
a brilliant episode.
It's wonderful character interaction because the characters, as you say, are already established when they're out of character. It's funny for that reason. You can't just do that with a bunch of new characters and expect it to hit home. We don't know whether Tasha Yar has sex with robots every weekend. Maybe she does. Is that the only thing anyone remembers about the episode? Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
It's obviously the only thing they even remember about the character for the amount of memes that are just data entry based, just an ongoing procession of very tired gags about that concept. So, yes.
It's not really fair to introduce a character, have her fuck a robot, then get killed by a
Oh
lump of
my god! Michelle Forbes. No, not Michelle Forbes. What's the actress's name who plays Tasha Yar?
Oh my god, I forgot her name. I'm so sorry.
So right. That's terrible. That's terrible because I said Forbes and that's not. That's the actress who
Denise
plays
Crosby.
Rose.
Denise Crosby.
Denise Crosby. God bless you, Denise.
I think Michelle Forbes and Ro Laren.
Ro Laren. Yes, there we go. Mixed them up. But yes, the whole of season 1 was just unfair to Tasha Yar. God.
Which is a real shame because they'd introduced her to be a woman who had lived through extremely difficult circumstances, had developed a kind of warrior attitude to life, and was now learning a gentler way of being. It could have been such a good, well-written character, and instead they have a shag data really early on.
And then die just absolutely unnecessarily. And at least they brought her back.
I think, to be fair, that was because she decided she wanted to leave at that point, which, given the episodes that they'd given her, I don't blame her.
That's exactly my next point was, I do not blame her for wanting to leave. And I'm glad that she at least agreed to come back as Sailor in the later TNG episodes, which she was very, very, very good.
I do still take issue that when she comes back, her character, terrible things happen to her characters. Yeah. They gave Tasha Yar's character a decent death by having an alternate universe version of her die in battle. everything that she would have wanted.
Yeah.
And then what happens? No, she gets kidnapped and forced to have a child with one of the Romulans. It's just, can we stop tormenting this character, please?
I would absolutely agree.
Off topic, right?
No, you're absolutely right. I do enjoy Stella as a character. I think she's a great character, but I appreciate that getting there.
She is good fun, but I think the route by which she got there via her poor long-suffering mother is just no. Can we stop?
I think that's a completely legitimate observation, and we contrast that therefore with characters like Kieran Reese, who has the same origins and yet is allowed to flourish wonderfully as this brilliant character, who is dealing with a terrible legacy, trying to aspire to something better, and dealing with, you know, the very, very pompous, self-righteous Federation along the way, which is a difficult situation for any of us to be in. I've segued us again. What on earth were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about the way that they strike a balance of different topics across the episodes.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Kat. Yes. So yes, we talked about how bad TNG season 1 was. Well, it wasn't bad, but it had some stinkers. Whereas season 1 of DS9, not really. It has a couple of dodgy episodes that we've discussed previously, but as a whole, I think it beds in and establishes this world quite well. It could have done more with character development, but ultimately was pretty good. Yeah, I can absolutely agree that I think season 1 of Deep Space Nine is ultimately a success story, because the ultimate question is obviously, Kat, do you want to go into season 2?
So the thing, I really freaking do, because I found things to love in almost every episode of season 1, having been told that season 1 is the weaker of the seasons, that it only goes uphill from here. So yeah, I'm very excited about moving on with it. But I have a few more things I was excited about that I want to share.
Yes, 100%.
We both love the set dressing. Having the station being Cardassian one rather than Federation built was a stroke of genius in that it gave the designers the scope to create a whole new feel for loads of aspects of the set design. And I especially like the acoudigrams, the lit up consoles that are differently styled because they're Cardassian rather than Federation. And I love the huge rolling gear shaped airlock doors. They're very dwarfish, very different from anything Federation. And of course, along with that, the huge set, the fact that you've got a set that genuinely exists in the real world on several different floors. You've got a bar built into it so the cameras can move from the bar out into the promenade, go up a flight of stairs if you want them to. It just gave them so much scope for more interesting direction than the 2 camera setup that they so often had to have on the Next Generation. And yeah, although the vast majority of stuff that happens in this series happens within the confines of the station, it doesn't feel as claustrophobic as TNG did when they had ship-based episodes. And one thing that they haven't done yet, in Emissary, they had a very brief use of a holosuite, I think, when Jake was fishing and having a conversation with Ben. I think they walk out of a holosuite rather than beaming up from Bajor.
Oh, I'll tell you what. Actually, they weren't on the station at that point. That was prior to them arriving at the station. They are on a ship bringing them to the station because they walk out of the holodeck. They say they'll bring the program with them, and then they walk to a window and see the station.
Well remembered, yes.
Because otherwise, it would have been a great example, and they do.
But it still is. It's still, I think, the only example of us seeing the inside of a holosuite in Deep Space Nine. We see Jake walking in, we see Jake coming out, we see Bokai walk out.
That's
but
right.
I don't think we actually have any holosuite.
There is one other that comes to mind, which is A Man Alone, when Odo is accused of murder. The victim is in a holosuite program getting a massage with the
You're right.
with the suckers. And then she gets pushed out the way.
To be frank, that could just have been a masseur's room somewhere on the station. When I think about holosuite episodes, I think about what TNG with it
Something
did with
going
it.
wrong.
I think about Picard going horse riding.
Yeah.
I think about some of the ridiculous landscapes they have. I think they have they go somewhere snowy in one episode. But yeah, they don't do that. I've got the impression that with Deep Space Nine, whether because they fucking built these sets and they are damn well going to get the use out of them, and because they wanted to keep it grounded on the station, they wanted us to get used to being there. although the holosuites are really built into the story, they get mentioned several times, that they're an aspect of capitalism, effectively.
Oh,
They're
massively.
part of they're part of sex culture aboard the station, how
Straight up
capitalism affects with that.
explicit declaration after years of, around TNG. Deep Space Nine is straight up these holodecks are for fucking. That's just.
Holodecks are for sex. But we don't then have loads of stuff happen in the holosuite, possibly because everyone's just fucking in them.
And you can't
but
really
also
show that.
But yeah, I think that is something I would have expected to have seen more of, more use of. I think particularly because we know that Jake goes in there to play baseball, and I know that there will be future episodes where we can see more of the holosuites.
But actually, now that you mentioned, that's a really good point. And chat, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Deep Space Nine probably has the least amount of we went onto the holodeck and then it malfunctioned and we nearly died. But we'll continue to use this system forever, which I think TNG and I'm going to spoil it right now, Voyager, it's really bad at. Really bad at. Let's use the holodeck and then have it go wrong and therefore put the crew in jeopardy.
There's so many TNG episodes where that
my god, there's so many, and it never changes. It goes right into Deep Space Nine, and it goes all the way through to
Voyager. Just put caution tape over the doors and stop crew. They're not even using it for training. It's like you can do the Kobayashi Maru in there, but nobody fucking does. They're just going in there to get their rocks off and build fancy landscapes featuring the rest of the crew.
Oh my god, so inappropriate. And again, no spoilers, but there is a DS9 episode coming up that turns that whole concept on its head, and I cannot wait for you to get to it. No, I've said too much. This is the problem with Deep Space Wine. It loosens the lips and encourages you to say more than you should. No, we will say no more about that. But
we've done pretty well at not spoiling me so far.
God, you wouldn't believe how hard it is. You wouldn't believe. But that's great. Yes. What a really good point. Yes, the holodecks, they are there, and they are a component in episodes, but they aren't the arena for the whole episode, to my knowledge. Very rarely is that the case. So, God, that's a really good point, and I hope Deep Space Nine does not disappoint you in that interpretation.
And the only other thing that I have in terms of stuff that I really loved in these episodes is fire. There are 2 episodes in particular, In Progress and In the Hands of the Prophets. There is real fire on the sets while real cast members are standing a few feet at most away from it. And it looks so good. Doing fire at that point as a special effect, if they CG'd it, it would have been expensive. But they could just use pre-shot imagery. They could just interpolate it. I think they've got a fireball coming down a corridor at one point, which they didn't do. But they did have some real flames on set. And having cast members, Kira Nerys picks up a flaming torch and sets fire to the thatched roof of a cottage. That definitely happened. None of it just set fire to a set that they built and then burned down for the episode. And it must have taken so much more, OSHA involvement, so much more health and safety governance, so much more, let's not set off the fire alarms, please, than just doing it in post. And it looks brilliant. And they're all wearing fucking 90s fabrics. Those guys are flammable as hell.
Oh my God, yeah. So dangerous. They would all go up like torches.
Yeah, and they still did it. And I love them for that. I love that in this age when it's a sci-fi TV show. It is a place where there's loads of computer technology genuinely used, although most of the accoutrograms are just painted. Beautiful fucking things.
Beautiful imagery.
But yeah, their use of fire really impressed me, and I really like it.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think I mentioned it as well in the very first episode, Emissary, when the station is under attack from the Cardassians. They blow up a lot of that set. Like, stuff straight up falls down, explodes, and we mentioned it in later episodes where things are damaged, and it's quite visibly happening. Yeah, the fire is a great example. I think, I can't bring to mind which episode it is. It may be Dramatis Personae, where they try and fight the anomaly, and sparks fly, and I don't mean CG sparks, but sparks, like pyrotechnics go off, the screens themselves static up, there's smoke visible on set. It's a far more real world view of damage at a time when, we've gotten so used to the Enterprise D, just somebody shook a camera and everybody convincingly rolls in their chairs and there's some CG sparks over the camera, and you just think, okay.
You don't spill anything on those carpets. You don't actually scorch anything.
No, you wouldn't believe it. Deep Space Nine came along and said, "We are going to burn this mother to the ground. You watch me." And I love that. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. And that is a really good thing to highlight, is that I think the creators, the directors, the cinematographers were so willing to get really to grips and make it believable, because they made it happen in front of the camera, no computer generated effects. And I love that. It made me believe it so much more, made me take it so much more seriously.
And at a time when CG was starting to get more usable, and whenever Odo transforms, for example, you've got a computer-generated animation.
It looks good.
So the temptation to overuse it must have been tremendous, and they don't. They really, I think they've just got really good design people on set who know how it's going to look on the screen and really presumably really pushed to keep those physical effects in. And I love that they did that. It's great.
Absolutely. I think we have shouted them out, but definitely the Akudas, Doug Drexler, the SFX people who did the physical effects for Star Trek, and many of them, as you said, came over from TNG, are just wizards, absolute straight up wizards with the models and the creativity. And we've talked about stuff like the pads, the laptops, the view screens, where they just go to incredible detail that would never have been detectable on a 90s CRT telly. I mean, it's incredible dedication.
I'd love that so much about Deep Space Nine. Just the feeling that so many of the people involved loved what they were doing and were given the scope to be creative with it. And in the last episode we watched, spent so long talking about camera movement, but you don't have to have fucking Dogma style camera work in an episode of Star Trek. They did it for the love of it, because they could practice and get it right and be precise with it. And it must have been such a pain in the ass of the actors who just want to say their lines and get home. But they loved the work enough to do that and to make it beautiful rather than just functional. And it's what keeps it special today, even though it was shot on such poor quality film.
I know.
You can't get decent freaking screenshots because it's grainy as hell.
It is terrible that we do not have higher quality source material. And I can only echo what you say, that it is a testament to everyone involved in making Deep Space Nine, that they still went to extraordinary efforts to go above and beyond what TNG had established. No slight to TNG, they did the best with what they had, but Deep Space Nine, I think just everybody involved grabbed every opportunity to squeeze just a little bit more originality out of it. And I will never, ever feel bad about celebrating one particular camera angle that might have been on screen for 3 seconds in a 45-minute episode, because it's worth it, because they took the time to make it happen.
Yes.
And as you say, it makes Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, it's good stuff. Brilliant.
So, coming up on 2 hours, despite having decided we weren't going to do a long one this time, my next section is just my hopes for season 2.
Great.
Which you may or may not remember what happens in season 2, because I'm sure you've all watched all of it before now. But basically, to list them off, I want more Garak. I want a Hector more Garak. I want more Bashir. I want more Garak and Bashir. I want more Nog and Jake stories. I love them on screen. I want to see more of them as characters. I want more Quark stories. Definitely want to see more Ferengi. I want more Morn, and I know that they're afraid that no one else is going to be able to get a word in edgeways whenever he's on the screen. But I still want to see more Morn. It's a price worth paying. I want more Bajor, which I'm pretty certain we're going to get, given that Wynn did not die in this episode. And that actually her opposing Vedek didn't die either. So I assume he's going to have to at some point in order for her to become Kai. I want more about the prophets, and I want more about Sisko's role as the emissary, because we got that at the start of season 1. We got Wynn being annoyed with him for being the emissary at the end of season 1, but we got precious little otherwise. So I want more digging into that. And I want more backstories about Kurz and Dax, and just more Trill lore generally, because there's just a whole load of good stuff to be seen there. And they've definitely scratched the surface of that with Dax, and particularly with the trial episode. But I want to see more Dax. I want more silly Dax backstories.
I mean, I don't know what to say, because I don't
No,
want to
you can
spoil
neither confirm nor deny.
thing. I can't confirm nor deny. I can say that some of what you've wished for is definitely going to take place. I can't say that it's going to take place in season 2, and you might need to wait a little bit longer, because you have identified some things that are real Deep Space Nine strengths, and however unconsciously you have been influenced by the internet and other fans as to what are Deep Space Nine strengths. the people making the show perhaps did not realise at the time.
As evidenced by having Garak in one episode of season 1.
Couldn't possibly say. But I'm scrolling through. Oh, is that season 3? No, that is season. What? Am I into season 2 or season? Right. Okay, this is interesting. Season 2 is 26 episodes long.
Oh wow!
Now season 1 is only 20, 19 if you count the M series parts 1 and 2. So some of the things
we're going to pick up the pace.
Yeah, we absolutely are going to have to. So some of the things that I thought might have happened in season 3 are happening in season 2, and do chime into what you've identified as things you want to see, and that separately people will identify as very strong points of Deep Space Nine. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Chat's definitely saying that season 2 is a ride. Indoor Cat is absolutely right. It is. It really, I would say the brakes are off. And season 2, I hope you will thoroughly enjoy. If you don't, I hope you so thoroughly hate it that you give wonderful, flaming feedback that we can all enjoy, even if we don't.
I shall typewrite letters to the producers telling them to bring the waddy back again 2 years after it ended.
You can try, I suppose. I don't really know how that's going to play out. Yeah. I don't want to say another thing. I do not want to say another thing because your very unique perspectives on Deep Space Nine so far have been the joy of this podcast.
Stupid perspectives.
No.
Dumbass perspectives. Absolute dog shit perspectives.
I don't know where this is coming from. This is between you and yourself. But no, it's been wonderful because you have seen things in a way that I know I've definitely never looked at it, that I know Chat hasn't, because I know you all in chat now. I recognise your names, David and Sarah and the Indoor Cat and Nigel. And I know you've all seen DS9. And I'm grateful that you've all kept it from Cat because their point of view is so refreshingly different. And we're not going to spoil that by telling you anything about season 2. So,
you just got to get on and watch it, Tim. We've got more episodes to do.
This is it. We absolutely do. So I'm not going to say anything else, Kat. Any kind of other thoughts? Anything we haven't covered off from your notes yet?
I don't think so. Just to get meta for a moment, to say thank you for suggesting that we make this podcast and for sticking it out throughout me going, oh no, I'm too tired. Oh no, I'm too sleepy. Oh Tim, no, I couldn't do it this week. I'm so very, very tired. I'm still doing it anyway. Just putting it off another week and still doing it. Thank you for sticking with me through that. Thank you to everyone who keeps turning up in the chat when we've been extremely on off with our episode production.
We appreciate it. And, we could have done this just us and recorded it as a podcast like that, but I kind of enjoy having Chat with us in something like Twitch.
It's very useful to have entered in the Indoor Cat.
Yes, thank you so much.
Did we promote?
We did promote the Indoor Cat, yes.
Ahead of Harry Kim.
You shouldn't know that.
I got them memes. I know.
Yes.
Tuvix deserved better. But yes, for bringing all the information that you bring. Love having people responding live to my technical takes. It's great fun.
It is great. Last week with the chat was absolutely on fire last week, and I loved engaging with you all. So that is wonderful. But Kat is very self-deprecating and is not putting out the times when I said I can't do it this week. We need to delay for whatever reason. And as anyone who is friends with Kat online knows that they love to race through a series and share wonderful opinions as Facebook posts. I will find myself scrolling through Kat's profile page just after they've watched an episode of something, go, that's great, that's right, that's hilarious. So Kat is limiting themselves incredibly bravely by watching one episode at a time, saving it, and coming back to talk to all of us. So no, we owe you.
I'm getting through the movies as fast as I can, as fast as I am. Desperate for more Star Trek content.
I totally understand that, and your willingness to limit yourself, therefore, to keep the podcast going is greatly appreciated.
Do you know? I think probably the worst sacrifice that I'm making is that the Bell riots are happening like now. It is 2024.
Yep.
And I'm not going to watch the Bell Riots episodes until some long time after the Bell Riots have been and gone.
About the way we're going, it'll probably be a couple of years before we get there. So we will actually be watching it 2 years after it's
Irish
happened.
reunification, not happening. Bell Riot, didn't happen. Watching Star Trek in hindsight, going, no, we're in the mirror universe, guys. None of it's happening.
Oh my god. Well, there were some redeeming features to the Mirror Universe, which you will discover when we get there, and not before. So, yes, it would be lovely to bring this episode in under 2 hours.
Let's.
So we will do that. So yes, I can only echo Kat. Thank you, chat, for taking part. Love that. You are all wonderful. Please continue to chirp in. Sarah Orange has been stamp collecting in the background, but has still been watching us. Thank you very much. The Voyager takes. Listen, that's like 8 or 9 years in the future. Indoor Cat, please don't overcommit us at this point. Or the Voyager.
I'm never going to run out of Star Trek in my lifetime. The way that we're going.
Exactly.
Reaching my century, and we'll finally be scraping towards the end of the final season of Deep Space Nine.
No, we will get there. We will absolutely slam through it. So yeah, so the intention is to come back as soon as possible and get on with episode 1 of season 2. I can't wait to do it. Kat, don't let me steamroll you though. Any kind of closing thoughts? Anything we've not mentioned?
I don't think so. Just thank you again, everybody, and I'm looking forward to season 2.
You know where we will be. Keep following us on here on Twitch. We love hearing from you in the chat. Thank you, Nigel. So we were looking forward to it, and we will be popping episodes on YouTube. And I promise I'm looking at ways of getting this turned into a proper podcast you can listen to in your ears. Although you won't be able to enjoy the wonderful imagery and our gurning faces. So that may be at your loss. This has been the roundup of season 1 of Deep Space Nine for our podcast, Deep Space Wine. I've been Tim and favorite Cat, and it's been wonderful having you all with us. Take care, and we will see you all very, very soon. Live long.
Take care,
indeed, prosper.